How old are you today?
Oh, unfortunately, Sam, I'm 70 today. A really old lady.
What does that feel like?
Weird. To believe that I have made 70 is weird. No, I can't believe I'm 70. I don't feel 70, but I don't know how you're supposed to feel when you're 70. Ask me when I'm 80 and I'll tell you.
Okay. I want you to tell me today about Nanny Elvin, my great-grandmother's house, and your memories of being a child in her kitchen and her weekly routine and things like that.
It was a proper nanny and granddaughter relationship of those days when you lived as a family. You normally lived with one of your parents, and you were one of the family, and life was so different because the war had just finished. So obviously there was a closeness towards everybody, and everybody was struggling, and we were still on ration books and had to wait for the ration books to come so that we could use our coupons. And I can remember there was a tiny greengrocer's shop opposite where we all used to live, and there was a queue outside it, and my mother said, "Quick, don't get in that queue, they're selling bananas," because bananas were very, very scarce.
So, what can you remember what the weekly coupons bought you?
Oh yes, sugar. One ration book was for sugar, and then you had one for tea. You had a sweet ration book as well, so you could, have so many sweets that particular week. And you also had clothing coupons. I can't remember how the clothing coupons worked. Whether you handed over a set amount for a set article, or whether it went towards purchasing something else. That's something I can't remember.
People always looked like they were so well dressed during and after the war. But yet, you had...
Yes, your grandparents used to dress that way. It was another thing that everybody had lunch at lunchtime. You cooked a meal at lunchtime, not like now. So therefore, after you had done your daily chores, i.e., your mum or your nan, they would cook the meal, and then they would get themselves dressed and sit down after. And then we always had supper. My grandmother always made supper, which was, the cloth was laid on the kitchen table and a wooden breadboard with the bread and the cheese came out, but not the selection of cheeses obviously that we get now, but it was cheese, and there was always pickle, and you always had a drink. So that was a given thing. I think it was 9 o'clock precisely. The breadboard came out, with the cheese and the butter, and that's what you used to have.
So supper being last meal at night,
yes,
after dinner.
Yes.
What was Nanny Elvin's kitchen like?
Very, very tiny. You went down 3 steps, but they never used to call it the kitchen, Sam. They used to call it the scullery. Why it was called a scullery, I don't know.
How would it differ to a modern kitchen in terms of what was?
Well, was it in my grandmother's kitchen? All there was a butler sink, a small sink, a cooker, and a little table for working on. It was quite tiny, and then the back door out into the garden.
And tell me about wash day.
It was always Mondays. I don't know whether it was the same in all households, but in our household it was always, you washed on a Monday. You didn't wash again till the following Monday. You always washed on a Monday. And the kettle, the copper would go on first thing in the morning, fill it up with water, and the gas went on to heat the water. Once it was at the right temperature, in went the soap powder, and in went the washing. And after it was done, it was taken out with long tongs, wooden tongs. Steam used to go everywhere, and then dumped into the sink and rinsed, and then outside into the yard, and you put it through a mangle.
What's a mangle?
A mangle was a huge monstrosity, two very big white rollers and a handle at the side. A little bit like the old sewer singing machines with a treadle, it was that sort of size, or much bigger, but that sort of arrangement. And then the old mangle, used to turn the mangle, used to fold the sheets, and then you would put them through the mangle, and you go and you have your hand the other side to catch them as they were coming through. Now, having said that, they didn't really need an awful lot of ironing because they were just so flat.
Tell me about the washing powder, or it wasn't washing powder?
Oh, yes, there was a scrubbing board, which was a wooden frame with a rippled glass, thick glass obviously, and that used to stand in the sink inside the bowl, and you'd have a bar of soap. Normally it was sort of fairy soap or sunlight soap in a big block, not the hand size that we now can buy. And they used to put the clothes onto the scrubbing board, and then you would, with the soap and the scrubbing brush, you would, a bit like you go into these foreign countries, Sam, when they're down by the river, splashing it on stones, aren't they? It's a similar, rubbing it on stones to get them clean. It was a similar sort of thing.
And what about the irons?
Oh, the irons. We didn't have an ironing board. We used to have an ironing cloth which used to go on the kitchen table. And we had a coal fire, and then on would go the black flat irons, always two, so that you had one hot and one heating. And then when it was the right temperature, to find if it was the right temperature, you used to either spit on the bottom of it, or spit your finger, and if it sizzled, it was just right for ironing. And then because they were hot, you'd have a cloth over the top to, keep your hands from burning.
And tell me about this, you mentioned a goffering iron.
Oh yes, I used to wear pretty little blouses with lace fronts or lace edgings or frills. And whereas today, if you just get the iron, you just iron, excuse me, normally, to make the lace stand out or the frills to stand out, there was what they called goffering irons, which were really and truly very similar to the hair tongs that you can buy today. Not the straighteners, the actual tongs, with the barrel. And then you used to put them in, and if you had a frill, you would put one of the blades behind the other, and you twist your wrist and go all the way down the front, so that the actual frill stood out. And then you also did it with your lace. Having said that, everything used to have to be starched with robin starch, which came in a little white box with a little red robin sitting on the outside of it, and you used to mix that with water. I don't know the ratio of it, but and you dip that up and down and dry it. So therefore, because the men had collars, they weren't studs like in the back. So of course all the collars had to be ironed separately, because they used to have a little button at the back that we used to click on to the actual collar.
Incredibly labour intensive.
So yes, and they always had to be starched so that they stood properly. Apart from that washing day, I can't. Of course, just the old wooden clothes era that used to go around the fire to wear the clothes.